Food and Wine Insider is a weekly look at a $1.5 trillion industry touching every American. Devoted to the business of purveying food and decanting wines, Food and Wine Radio is a unique program highlighting not food recipes or wine vintages, but how to make a profit while satisfying America's palates. In this competitive but highly rewarding sector, many men and women have made profits while fulfilling a dream. Food and Wine Insider is all about better managing any business involving food and wine. Each week, your co-hosts sit down with successful restaurateurs, food mavens, winery vintners, store owners, food suppliers, and other leaders in the worldwide industry that centers on foodstuff and wine. In frank give-and-take sessions, guests and panelists talk about the business of bringing healthy and pleasurable foods and wines to others. Your Food and Wine Radio host are Ariane Daugin, former president of the Specialty Food Association and a longtime food executive who has held senior positions both here and abroad with Kraft Foods and Philip Morris. Don Mazzella, a nationally known business commentator. On each show, they invite leaders of the world's culinary and wine industries to share the secrets of their success. Visit us at foodandwineinsider.com.
For years, we have watched an extraordinary woman build an extraordinary food company. Ariane Daguin has built D'Artagnan Foods into a specialty meats powerhouse. I'm not even going to stop here. I'm going to turn it over to Anne to talk with this wonderful guest.
Hi, Ariane. I'm very excited to be speaking with you today. Ariane is Ariane is the owner of D'Artagnan, the finest purveyor of gourmet foods, and the first to produce foie gras in the U.S., starting in 1985. Ariane, I would love for you to tell our audience a little bit about your background and why you brought foie gras and game to the American table.
Well, on and on, I mean, there was a lot of chance involved in this and timing, just lucky timing. But I was born and raised in Gascony, which is in the southwest of France, where D'Artagnan is a big hero, is our hero there. He's a character who really existed during Louis XIII and Louis XIV in France Kingdom. And so I was raised there, and I'm the seventh generation of a family of chefs and restaurateurs in Auch in Gascony, and we could say I have a little bit of the food business in my blood because of that, and same thing with my brother and my sister, and so I came here to try to escape it and to become a journalist. I went to Barnard College, but I guess the fate pursued me and caught me up, and so I went right back in the food business. And in Gascony, foie gras and the duck that we raise for foie gras is a big specialty. And so it was a natural, when there was this opportunity and those first farmers who decided to raise ducks for foie gras, I couldn't pass it on. And that's when I started D'Artagnan, the company. That was 32 years ago.
Unbelievable. There's a quote from you that I think is really telling. You've said, to have the best quality possible in the meat protein business, it needs to come from animals that were well raised. Please talk about this passion for how animals are treated.
Yes, the key to that really is respect. If you respect the animals, you're not going to factory farm them. You're going to have a humane size farm or ranch, and you're going to be able, by extension, you're going to be able to see if there is a problem with one of them. And by extension, they're going to have room to roam around, and you're going to be able to give them wholesome food. You're not going to need to give them medications because they are too crowded in one pen. So everything stems from that, from the respect of the animal. And the result of that of having animals that are raised without stress and with wholesome food and lots of space, that result is what interests me. The result is just excellent taste. And that's what we've been trying to do for the last 32 years, is to try to have a partnership with groups of farmers who will in turn deliver to us the best possible meat. And basically, it cannot be but from animals that were happy in the farm.
Awesome. You know, you've also said that you only partner with small-scale farms, obviously for the reason that you're talking about, but how do you evaluate the farms that you do work with?
Then it will depend on the species. You know, if it's a poultry or if it's a meat, if it's a lamb or a pork, but in general, poultry that we have for our warehouse here in New Jersey come from Amish farmers in Pennsylvania, and for them it's very easy to qualify them because they have the same philosophy than we do. Their philosophy is that they were given that land and that those cattle or those poultry. I mean, basically they were given a legacy, and their responsibility is to pass it to the next generation as good a shape or better than what was given to them. So they are very mindful of the pollution and no over industrialization of their cultures. That's one example. But we also have warehouses in Houston, in Chicago, and in Macon, Georgia. And so as we open warehouses in the country, we look for new farmers, and we tend to attract and to look for farmers and ranchers that have the same philosophy than us. Small farms, respect of the animal, and after that we give them a series of specs, the specifications that we have, so that we do have a consistency in the excellence of the results, and they follow that. For example, we have a group of farmers in Missouri at the foot of the Ozark Mountains, and they raise Berkshire pork, which is a heritage pork for us. And we've been at the beginning it was very difficult to find them, but now all the other farmers around are knocking at the door, and they want to enter the group. And as we grow, we add more farmers to the groups.
Wonderful. That's really fantastic. I think we both lived through the controversy over foie gras, which, by the way, I love foie gras, and the process for fattening the liver of the bird. I really would love for you to tell the audience about your perspective on the process, so that you can clarify and make clear to folks what really is the fact that it is humanely treated and this is not really an issue.
Yes, it is perfectly humanly. It is a perfect human process. There is nothing wrong with the way we raise the ducks to get the foie gras. All the farmers do, is to reproduce or to try to reproduce what happens in nature. In nature, in the wild, twice a year, web-footed animals, ducks and geese, have to store calories before a long flight of migration. So in the fall, they go from north to south. In the spring, they go back to the north. And they need to store calories for a very good reason. It's to be able to do the flight, if possible, non-stop, so that they protect themselves against predators. So they have to fly at high altitudes because they are big birds, and as far as possible. There is only two ways to store calories in a web-footed animal, in a duck or in a goose. Those two ways are in the skin, and this is why these poultry, ducks and geese, have a fattier skin than any other poultry. And I would recommend that every time you cook a duck or a goose, you have to prick the skin, or you have to score it without going down to the flesh, so that the extra fat will pour down the pan as it cooks, and so that you get a very crisp and very nice skin. And the second place where they can store calories is their liver. And this is very, very unique to web-footed birds. No other species, no other living beings on Earth can do that, can store calories in their liver. So their liver can grow almost 10 times its regular size, and their liver is exactly in the middle of their body, unlike everybody else. You know, we all have our liver down into the right a little bit, and all the other animals as well, except ducks and geese. They need that liver right in the middle because it's going to become so heavy twice a year that they need it as a balance, you know, as they fly. So that's the premises. And the first person who was able to see that beautiful liver is probably a hunter during Egyptian times. And then they started to reproduce it in a farming environment by just feeding intensively those geese or those ducks. And eventually they found a gizmo, which is a kind of a feeding machine with a funnel that you insert inside the esophagus of the duck or of the goose, a little bit like mommy bird would insert her beak and would regurgitate food in the esophagus of her baby bird when they are really small. So the esophagus, and I don't want to call it neck because I don't want to do any anthropomorphism. So the esophagus is insensitive. It's lined with collagen. That allows those birds to be able to swallow huge amounts of food, put it in the crop sack, which is the first kind of a stomach, reserve, right there at the bottom of the esophagus, and then fly to shelter to be able to digest and continue eating once they are in the shelter, not right there where they found the food, where it's so dangerous because of all the predators around. So we just use that natural propensity of those ducks and geese to fatten themselves, and that's how we get foie gras all year long. The only difference is we don't do it twice a year; we do it all year long.
Yeah.
But that's foie gras. Yeah.
Thank you, Ariane. I just learned an awful lot about foie gras, and I'm so glad to know it.
I'm sorry if it's too technical or a little bit gruesome, but it
was
necessary
absolutely
to understand.
Perfect.
Yeah,
absolutely perfect. When consumers are looking to select meat, what do you feel should be in the labeling of the meat? What should they look for?
That's a loaded question, Anne. That's very loaded. There are, in theory, the USDA has a whole set of rules that would dictate what you can or cannot put on that label. But there is a constant line that's moving in the wrong direction, because marketers of big ag and of the huge companies and the factory farming find ways to go around it and to and to be part of that labeling specificity. I'm going to give you an example. Today, some of those small farmers in Amish country in Lancaster County in Pennsylvania raise organic chickens for us. Our organic chickens are, because they are not factory farm, they have total full access to the outside. They have a minimum of 3 square feet per chicken outside and inside minimum. They eat only the grain certified organic that those farmers are raising on their farm, and we try to wait until they are really mature for a commercial breed around almost 50 days, between 48 and 50 days, and for a heritage breed we push them up to 100 and 110 days, sometimes more when a restaurant client wants a really big bird. So in order to do that, you have to have, a small farm, and that's where they are raised like that. Now, all I can say on my label by doing this is a certified organic, it's an organic label. Granted, we have an additional third party that confirm and that we are actually raise them humanly, but that's it. Okay. Any big company, and they have started already, who actually raise organic, quote unquote, chickens in those huge coops where you put 15,000 chickens at a time in there, can get away with still calling them organic with a couple of loopholes. The first one is that they changed, their lobby was able to change the definition of organic at the USDA label for to be able to put it on the label. And today you don't need a specific minimum amount of space per bird. You have in the definition that you need sufficient space. My idea of sufficient space is probably not the same than Purdue, okay? Then, instead of full access to a pastured outside, it is now, the definition is now, they have to have access to the outside. So again, a coop, a huge, one of those factory farm coop of 15,000 chickens has one little door in a corner of the coop there that is open or not if the weather is too bad. But in any case, that door is so small that it can take only one bird out at a time, and chickens will not go outside. First of all, because it's not their, they would go outside if they could go outside together, if the doors were wide open. But to have that really small access like that for 15,000 chickens, the result is not one chicken goes outside. And when you look at those farms from a drone, from the sky, you can see that there is not even a fence outside. So it's not a question, they're not going to go outside. They don't need to build a fence outside because they know that no chickens are going to go outside. And the third thing, which to me is very disturbing, is that now we are able to get from China and India and other countries certified, quote unquote, grain, cereal, that had been certified by third-party organisms that are right there in China or in India, and that I'm not sure have the same standards than we do here. So today, that chicken coming out of that process on the label is called organic chicken. Exactly the same way that my chicken coming from a small farm raised in very, very different situation is called an organic chicken. Something is wrong with that.
Dan Perkins here from Recalculating.biz with your featured book. I want to tell you about a recent interview I had with Bob Bethel, a turnaround specialist with lots of success in small business. Bob's new book is Strengthen Your Business, Fail-Proof Strategies for Small Business. He tells us of his life successes and failures that have made him and his clients so successful. Over the years, Bob has brought 77 companies back from the brink and changed them into thriving, profitable businesses. His energy is amazing, and at 74, he proves that you can still have a great deal to give others if you just try. His suggestions are easy to understand and very helpful. One insight struck me was that most companies do not have a plan. The old Chinese proverb says, if you don't know where you're going, then any road will take you there, is true today. Bob Bethel's book, Strengthen Your Business, can be found at Amazon.com or can be ordered at your local bookstore. This has been Dan Perkins with your Recalculating.biz featured book.
You are listening to Ann Daw and Don Mazzella, and the program is Food and Wine Insider. If you have a question or know someone you think our listeners should hear, contact us at foodandwineinsider.com. Remember, our programs are heard every Wednesday and Saturday on this station via amfm247.com or on iHeartRadio, as well as Roku Television. You can listen to past shows at foodandwineinsider.com.
Ariane Daguin has built D'Artagnan Foods into a specialty meats powerhouse.
Oh, absolutely. Boy, that was incredibly enlightening. So thank you for that, Ariane. I hope people will make a point of checking that out. You mentioned earlier that you have distribution centers in Chicago and Houston, and this summer you expanded to Macon, Georgia. I had a couple of questions. Did you have any issues when Hurricane Harvey came to town in Houston?
Yes, our warehouse was well protected, and we were on high ground, so we were okay there. We did. There was an electric outage, but not long enough to do any damage. What the damage that we incurred was more because all our clients were closed, the restaurants. And so because we carry highly perishable items, we had to, there was a lot of food in there, a lot of poultry and meat that we were not able to sell. Meat that spoils within a week, So that was the extent of the damage. But I was very surprised on how fast the recovery happened there and how fast people cleaned up and actually reopened the restaurants and how fast clients came back in the restaurants. That happened much faster in Houston than it did in Miami, for example.
Interesting. With your recent move to Georgia, I'd love for you to talk about that experience, why Georgia, and anything you'd like to share regarding the learning curve of such a move.
Basically, we can, because of our philosophy, which is to serve the best meat, best poultry, and mushrooms possible. Our core client is a restaurant, and we are limited in our growth. We do a good business with some retailers and also consumers. We have a nice e-commerce business on our website, d'Artagnan.com. But the bulk of our business is the best chefs in America. And so there is a finite amount of those restaurants, though it's growing every year, it's growing at a limited pace. And so the only way for us to grow is basically by geography. We have refused to diversify and fill the truck with stuff that we don't either that would compromise our control of quality or that is not our core business. So unlike other people who serve restaurateurs, we do not carry ketchup, we do not carry mineral water, we do not carry cheese, fish, eggs, except duck eggs and quail eggs. we stay in our the course in our core business, which is good meat, good poultry, good game, good mushroom. And so growing geographically was the only way. This is America. If you don't grow, you die. So we need to grow, but we need to grow with measure, and we need to take care of the sourcing before we take care of the sales. And so when we see a potential, and that's what happened in Atlanta, we were here in New England, then we saw in Chicago a big potential. We were starting to send by Federal Express, lots of packages there, and that's how it became such a critical volume that we opened the first warehouse there. Same thing happened in Houston, and then same thing happened in Atlanta, where the market of the restaurateurs became big enough for us to justify a warehouse where we could store 2-3 days maximum those perishables that we were going to then deliver ourselves with our own trucks. And that's
Ariane, Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No. It's just that's how we've been functioning. And so right now we're eyeing west a little bit. Maybe Denver would be the next one.
Mm-hmm. No, that's fabulous. I've been told I may have time for one last question, and I do want to ask you, what is your favorite meal? And is it something you would prepare for yourself or have someone else prepare for you?
So as a cook, my huge pleasure is to give pleasure to people. So I love to cook, and at home I cook. I have probably one every 2 Sundays or 3 Sundays. I have a bunch of friends, all of them chefs or big foodie, and then we experiment and we cook together, and it's very rewarding. And especially on different occasions, or the rare occasions when my daughter comes and visits from California. Cooking together is a great source of pleasure. But I can tell you, eating an extraordinary meal made with love by a very talented chef is also a very, very big source of pleasure. And of course, I'm all for that too. It's difficult to tell you that I have a favorite or a favorite meal or a favorite dish. I like good food in general, and I like to be wowed, and to discover new things. And this is happening in America today. This is really happening. I do believe we have some of the best chefs in the world right here in the U.S. today.
Wow, this has been an exciting half hour, but we have to call it a day.
Okay.
Ariane, your website and how people can reach you?
www.dartagnan.com. That's DARTAGNAN.com.
Thank you, Ariane. Love talking with you, and would love to see you soon.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Want to know more about health savings accounts for your company or yourself? Go to 2hsa.com and get a free employer's primer. Health savings accounts are a cost-effective way of offering health care benefits to your employees and yourself. HSAs build retirement funds for your employees, improve morale, and reduce your health care benefit cost. For a free employer guide to HSAs, go to 2hsa.com. That's 2hsa.com.
Dan Perkins here from Recalculating.biz with your featured book. I want to tell you about a recent interview I had with Bob Bethel, a turnaround specialist with lots of success in small business. Bob's new book is Strengthen Your Business, Fail-Proof Strategies for Small Business. He tells us of his life successes and failures that have made him and his clients so successful. Over the years, Bob has brought 77 companies back from the brink and changed them into thriving, profitable businesses. His energy is amazing, and at 74, he proves that you can still have a great deal to give others if you just try. His suggestions are easy to understand and very helpful. One insight struck me was that most companies do not have a plan. The old Chinese proverb says, if you don't know where you're going, then any road will take you there, is true today. Bob Bethel's book, Strengthen Your Business, can be found at Amazon.com or can be ordered at your local bookstore. This has been Dan Perkins with your Recalculating.biz featured book.
You are listening to Ann Daw and Don Mazzella, and the program is Food and Wine Insider. If you have a question or know someone you think our listeners should hear, contact us at foodandwineinsider.com. Remember, our programs are heard every Wednesday and Saturday on this station via amfm247.com or on iHeartRadio, as well as Roku television. You can listen to past shows at foodandwineinsider.com.
More and more, our food items are coming from abroad and into local markets. Our next guest is David Noll, who founded the New Zealand food importer Pacific Resources International some 40 years ago. He's here to talk about his company, which first introduced Manuka honey to American consumers, and which today is a family-run business offering a wide range of products. David, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much. I'm glad to be here.
David, you have this wonderful romantic story that I read of how you found yourself in New Zealand. I wonder if you could recount the story for our listeners.
Well, it was a few years ago now, back in the 70s, when, of course, everything in California was going to be in the ocean. A lot of our friends that were going to university had gotten a lot of new information about earthquakes and thought that the big earthquake was going to come, any day. And so we decided, a couple of friends of mine and myself decided that we better find a place to go if California was going to go into the ocean. And it took us about a year to find out about New Zealand. We had no idea where we were going or what we were doing. We just hopped on a plane with our surfboards under one arm and guitars under the other and took off for New Zealand. And when we landed there, it was an outstanding place. It's they call it God's country there, and it certainly looks like it when you see the beautiful oceans, the beaches, the greenery that is everywhere there. It's very pristine country. It wasn't long after we got there and started establishing ourselves that we found that the cheapest place to get a lunch was at the Auckland University, and so we used to head up there for lunch, and we thought that if we could keep our mouths shut and not give away our accent, we would just file in with all the students and get a lunch, and that's where a group of ladies that included my now wife found us out, and we started sitting and having lunch with them, and I kind of made the mistake, I guess you could call it, of carrying my wife's books to class for her after one of the lunches, and wasn't long after that we started dating, and then got married there. But I fell in love with New Zealand from the very beginning, not only because of my beautiful wife, but also because of the cleanness of the country, the friendliness of the people, and the ability to have the freedom to enjoy all the beautiful things that were there. It was just a great place to be.
That's fabulous. How did this personal journey, I think we're all sort of wondering if we could have this experience ourselves. How did this personal journey lead you to found the New Zealand food import company, Pacific Resources?
Well, I was there for 13 years, and as in any case, you make a lot of friends and start to raise your family and stuff. And a few of my friends were in the beekeeping business, it started off very primitive, just a couple of hives here. In fact, the friend that I helped out was helping an older gentleman whose name was Claude, who's since passed away a number of years ago. But he was kind of the what we call the mad scientist. He was always making concoctions and things out of bee pollen and honey and stuff, and he had a few beehives, so we would go around and just help him, lift his hives and move them from spot to spot and stuff. And as time went on, we decided to bring our 3 grandchildren, our 3 oldest daughters. We have 6 total, 3 born in New Zealand, 3 born here in the U.S., over to see my parents. And I traveled over here with them, and during that time, the friend that I was helping with the beehives, he'd started a small company and was trying to export honey and some of the pollen and the propolis and stuff. And so I told him I'd try. I'd give it a shot over here. He wanted to send some stuff to the U.S. And in those days, we were just living in our house here in Santa Barbara, and got a few things in. The mistake was, because I never had any intentions of staying here, was that Santa Barbara just loves honey, and I didn't know that. And so as soon as I started taking some of this New Zealand honey around, everybody fell in love with it. And so I started supplying some of the Santa Barbara stores, and then we started to go to Ventura and Goleta and L.A. and San Francisco, and we attended our first trade show, and nobody really knew about New Zealand those days, but they appreciated the quality of the food that came out of New Zealand. Most of our honeys, and they still are today, are cool processed and raw, mainly because most of the beekeepers just don't have the facilities to process the honey. And of course, when you cool process a honey, it keeps all its nutrients and value-added products that only Mother Nature can give you in the honey. And so people really fell in love with the New Zealand. And, it wasn't a hard job. When you have really high-quality products from a great source, they kind of sell themselves. And so as I put more and more products on the shelf, people found them and kind of fell in love with them. And we worked out of our garage probably for the first 4 or 5 years, and then we had to get a warehouse. And we never intended to stay. We have a house in New Zealand still, and we were hoping to get back there. We had rented it out for 3 or 4 months to start, and we just never got back. The kids started growing up, going to school, and then it was impossible to move back. And we did more trade shows, and we continued to expand the business to what it is today. And we're doing the same thing. And now I'm looking at passing the business along to my second oldest daughter and her husband. It's from England. They take a real interest in the business. And my number 2 son, Aaron, he's also working here in the business. And I'm at that place now where we're finally maybe going to be able to realize our dream of moving back to New Zealand.
In family-owned businesses, succession can be the hardest thing to figure out, and it sounds like you have that, so that's really fantastic.
Yeah.
Starting an import company can't really be easy, and I would think logistics from New Zealand could be costly. How did you get the business off the ground? What resources did you need?
It was just kind of go as you learn as you go sort of thing. I had to go down and talk to the FDA. I had to talk to the U.S. Customs people. We had to find out how to label the product properly. The FDA has dozens and dozens of rules, much like the tax department. And it wasn't as hard as it is today. If I had to do it today, I probably would not have been successful. But when you go back, 30-some years, almost 40 years now, people were a little bit more friendly in the government departments and a little bit more helpful. And you just have to go in and ask and stand in line and wait and find out what the regulations are. And then you have to work with the steamship companies. It's not much different than sending stuff across the U.S., except you have to bring it from 3,000 miles away. if that's the correct amount of miles. I don't know if that's right or not, but New Zealand, it was difficult because there wasn't a lot of ships coming up to California, so you had to try to get everything timed. And in those days, we had letters. We didn't have email. We didn't even have fax machines. So you wrote a letter, and it took almost 7 days to get down there and 7 days to get back. So you had almost a half a month to wait for responses sometimes from either the New Zealand government, or one of the steamship companies or the companies we were working with. And it was a bit of hard work. But we started out small, just bringing in a few pallets here and there. And I think one of the biggest blessings I had was a really great customs broker, which I still work with today. He really dug in and found out a lot of the details for me that we needed to do for the FDA and customs and stuff. And even to this day, FDA looks at all of our stuff every time it comes in. But because of our long history and keeping a clean nose, we don't get a lot of scrutiny like a lot of other companies do. But no, it was it's hard to do, and it was like learning a whole new thing all over again.
I'm sure there were some really significant lessons learned for you having developed this business over the last 30 years. What decisions would you have made differently as you look back on your 20-something self?
That's a good question, and I think maybe I probably would have never started, and I know how it is. You don't realize it until you're in the middle of it. That you're there, but our goal was never to stay in the U.S., but to transition back to New Zealand after about 6 months of helping my friend get established here. And if had I known the ramifications, I probably would have said no, at the very beginning, and not taking on that. But they say hindsight's 20/20. But looking back now, I've enjoyed every step of the way. I have a passion for New Zealand and the products that it makes. I love the country and the people there and the products they produce. And to be honest, having gone through the whole process and what we're doing today, I was able in the early days to really tell people about New Zealand and how great their products were. That was long before Lord of the Rings or the America's Cup being won by New Zealand. Nobody knew about New Zealand, and so it was a great privilege on my part to wave the New Zealand flag and to tell people how great it was and how friendly the people were and stuff. And now when I look back, I don't think that I would do anything different. Except that I'd like to live there more often.
Yeah. What has been your proudest moment in establishing your business?
Yeah, I was. I think the proudest moment was with the discovery of the abilities of Manuka honey. It's been quite an interesting thing that just came out of the blue. In the early days, Manuka honey was found to be just a regular dark honey that tasted more like molasses and really didn't have a lot of commercial value. But a professor, Dr. Peter Mullen out of Christchurch University in New Zealand, who was an internist that worked with a lot of digestive issues and immune problems, started experimenting with raw honeys at lab temperature, just in room temperature conditions. And it worked to kill off most viruses and bugs that were causing intestinal problems for people. And he thought he found the greatest thing in the world. So he started giving it to his patients, but found that none of them got better. In some cases, they even got worse. And so he went on a search for about another 18 months to 2 years to find out what the problem was. And he found that it was the body temperature at 98.6 degrees that was causing the activity to be reduced in the honey. Your body's like a little oven, and most beehives, whether you find them in the Antarctic or the middle of the Sahara Desert, the bees keep them at about 68 to 72 degrees constantly. And so the honey's never been had no need to work outside those temperature ranges. But he stumbled across Manuka honey, and Manuka honey was a heat tolerant honey. So your body temperature, either using it on the outside or internally, didn't affect the activity of the raw honey. Now, Manuka honey also has about 2 to 3 times more antibacterial activity in it than any other raw honey. But that wouldn't have mattered except for the fact that it's heat tolerant. And that's changed our industry completely, and that probably was something that caught me completely out of the blue because now we had this product that's become a multi-billion-dollar industry right across the world for helping people address digestive issues, and also they use it in burn treatment centers and also for diabetic ulcers. Diabetic ulcers cannot be healed as far as modern medicine is concerned. You have them for life. They can dress them, clean them, try to keep them clean, but they never heal with diabetics because of their poor circulation. But once they start using Manuka honey, within 7 to 14 days, those wounds start to close up and disappear completely. But honey's always been used, since the time of the Egyptians for wound dressing. Honey keeps moisture away from the wound so that bacteria cannot form and keep the wound open. And then the honey, in its natural state, in a raw form, will feed the skin and help it close up the wound a lot quicker. My wife just recently had a melanoma taken off her back arm, and when she told the doctor that we import Manuka honey, he said that's the greatest thing for wound treatment. He uses it on all his patients to stop scarring and to help the wound clear up and heal itself without a scar. So, it's a pretty fantastic thing. And the honey itself in a 1-pound jar on the retail shelf now sells anywhere from $25 to $125, which you'd never think you'd pay for a jar of honey. But the only reason that it's demanding that kind of price range is because it works, and it's been that way probably now for the last 10 to 15 years. It just continues to grow and to grow and to grow. In fact, demand is outstripping supply abilities. The honey keepers that the beekeepers we work with in New Zealand, they're small family-owned operations, and honey harvesting is just like growing any other crop. Some years you have great crops, and some years you don't have such good crops, and so you never know what you're going to get from Mother Nature. And then we have the product tested 3 times before it leaves New Zealand to make sure that it has the activity in it for our consumers to get the benefits from, because sometimes the Manuka honey, if it's not tested, still looks the same, still tastes the same, but doesn't have the activity to do what it's supposed to do for either digestive conditions or wound treatment, burns, those kind of things. So we have all our stuff tested 2 or 3 times before it leaves New Zealand, just to ensure the consumer. And we're the only company that produces a certificate of analysis for every jar and every batch that comes out of New Zealand.
Want to know more about health savings accounts for your company or yourself? Go to 2hsa.com and get a free employer's primer. Health savings accounts are a cost-effective way of offering health care benefits to your employees and yourself. HSAs build retirement funds for your employees, improve morale, and reduce your health care benefit cost. For a free employer guide to HSAs, go to 2hsa.com. That's 2hsa.com. You are listening to Ann Daw and Don Mazzella, and the program is Food and Wine Insider. If you have a question or know someone you think our listeners should hear, contact us at foodandwineinsider.com. Remember, our programs are heard every Wednesday and Saturday on this station via amfm247.com or on iHeartRadio, as well as Roku Television. You can listen to past shows at foodandwineinsider.com.
David Noll, who founded the New Zealand food importer Pacific Resources International some 40 years ago.
I'm sorry, go ahead, finish.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think the fact that you have this certificate is really important, because what I would note is that there's a lot of other Manuka honeys on the market, and And I wonder how you help consumers really know they're getting the right Manuka honey with the proper health benefits, as all these other brands are sort of coming onto the market.
Yeah, well, it always amazes me how people get brilliant at making money. Again, it's a multi-million-dollar business, and you're going to attract people that want to sell honey, at the higher prices, even though they don't want to go through the testing process. And again, that's why we work directly with the same beekeepers that we have always worked with before Manuka came out. They've always produced high-quality honeys, and then we test them. There have been things where people will spike heat the Manuka honey. You can heat it very, very quickly. It excites the honey, and it shows a very high testing property the first time around. But within 7 days, all that activity's gone. It just loses it. There's other people that have come up with other standards like pollen tests to show that checking the Manuka honey for the pollen count in it. But we found that some of those people that use the pollen count test will use a honey that has very, very low pollen, and they'll blend it with Manuka. And when you test it, it shows a high pollen test for Manuka, even though it's maybe 90% of a different type of honey that has very low pollen count in it. And so people get very creative when there's money involved. And, for us, we just wanted to take the high road, and so we make sure that the consumer has access to a certificate of analysis from an independent lab that they can call us and give us the batch number off their jar. We can send them out that certificate of analysis, and it shows them exactly the activity. And there are several different types of activity in Manuka honey. There's another company that just uses one of those and grades their honey out at very high numbers, and it looks impressive. The problem is if you don't have the other components in there, it's sort of like saying, well, I've got a brand new car, but I don't have an engine. The car's not going to go anywhere. It may be the best looking car in the world and brand new, but without that engine in it, it's not going to get you very far. And so people come up for some very clever marketing ideas, and they're making, some fairly good money. And it's not so much that the honey that they're selling is bad. It just doesn't have the activity that addresses a lot of the issues that people are looking for. And so we have the biggest range. We were the first to bring Manuka honey into the U.S., and we have a unique Manuka honey that's tested for any type of situation that a person can desire for. We have anywhere from a 5+ up to a 20+ in what we call our active range, which we don't worry about how much Manuka is in it. We just test it for its activity only, so the consumer knows about the activity. And then we have the UMF range, which goes from 5 to 15. Now, the UMF range, if you're looking for purity, is really the only place to go because it tells you how pure it is and how strong it is. The UMF factor is probably the most comprehensive test that they have right at the moment. The New Zealand government at present is trying to clamp down on the regulations because there is a lot of what they call fake Manuka honey out there. And a lot of people take it, and in some cases, because it's just a good raw honey from New Zealand, it'll help with their conditions. But it's not always that it's Manuka or that it has the activity that they're trying. And when you get into the acute conditions like burns and diabetic ulcers and acute problems with the digestive tract, a lot of these honeys just fail. They just don't hold up to the standards. Everyday use.
Which is, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, and certainly because I think people are paying a premium because they want that antibiotic effect or that, digestive effect or wound treatment effect. You don't want people to stop believing in Manuka honey. So it really is a problem. It reminds me a little bit of the olive oil business where,
right.
people say it's pure, extra virgin olive oil. And a lot of times it's a combination of vegetable oils and some bit of olive oil. And, that's a disappointment, to know that it can be done incorrectly.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but that's just human nature. If there's a way to make an extra dollar, people seem to find that ability to to create, and like I said, a lot of these companies spend a lot of money on marketing, and getting their story out there, and it's not always 100% true, and so we've taken that high road, and just made sure that the consumer knows that we're the only company that produces that certificate of it. Now, some won't tell you anything about their honey activity. One company, they put a 16 plus on their jar, and when you ask them about how that relates to their activity, they say, well, it's just part of our logo. It's not really a part of the activity, which is very misleading to the consumer. It's very misleading for some that has a problem and they're going out trying to buy that. But hopefully in the next year or so, the government will have stronger regulations in place and clean up a lot of that stuff that's out there. Unfortunately, the only downside of that is that it'll reduce the amount of what people think is Manuka honey out there in the marketplace, and so it may drive the prices up higher when people have to really test their stuff and make sure that the truth in labeling laws are met. There may be some problems there, but time will tell. My policy is keep your nose clean and do the best you possibly can.
Absolutely. So how can consumers learn more about PRI's Manuka honey?
I think the best way to do is you can subscribe to our newsletters on our website. We put out weekly reports, which includes recipes and updates in the marketplace about Manuka honey. It also tells you why our Manuka honey is the best in the U.S. We go to great details and explain to consumers. We have two great people that work the phones day and night, explaining to customers the difference between our honeys and stuff. And they can always call in. I'm available most of the time. Sometimes I get too many phone calls, but if they have a specific question or a need that they need to address and they're not quite sure where to get off the bus on the different strengths and stuff, we have people here to help them. And if I'm available, I'm more than happy to help them. But going on our website, reading the stuff that's on the website. And then, if they can subscribe to the newsletter that comes out every week, they'll be kept up to date with a lot of the stuff that goes on in the Manuka world.
Dave, tell us the website.
The website is shop SHOPPRI. So that's SHOPPRI.com.
It will also be up on our website tonight. Tonight on our website, Food and Wine Insider.com.
Hey, the more the merrier. We're just here to help people, and if we can do that, that's great.
Well, that's really awesome. Yes, go ahead.
We have time for just one more question.
Okay.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. Where else do you distribute your products besides the U.S.?
We don't try to go outside the North American continent. We have a distributor in Texas that buys from us and supplies Mexico, and we have people that we have worked with in Panama, Puerto Rico, but our main drive is the U.S. and Canada. The Canadians buy a bit of product off us. The problem is with Canada, we have the French labeling laws that I don't get involved in, and I let whoever wants to bring it to Canada do that. Also, because we sell to national distributors right across the country, there are a number of people from Korea, Hong Kong, China, Japan, different countries that will buy from our distributors, and so we often find our products in different parts of the world, not because we're trying to sell there, but because they buy from some of our U.S. distributors and then export to their own countries. But our agencies with our New Zealand suppliers are mainly for the U.S. and the North American continent, and so we don't try to develop export marketplaces for our products. We try to stay within our realm here, and believe me, that's enough.
Well, maybe for another day, I'd love for you to talk about your Pacific sea salt, but I don't think we have time today. But I think that would be a great follow-up for us.
Yeah, it's another great New Zealand product with a great story.
We're talking with David Noll, the importer of a product that we all need at some point in our lives. David, your website again and how people can reach you?
Our website is shop, SHOPPRI.com. Or you can call the office anytime if you have concerns or questions about the conditions that they're going through. And our phone number here is 805-684-0624.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, David.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
You've been listening to Food and Wine Insider with Ann Daugh and Don Mazzella. Want to join us on a future show? Contact us at foodandwineinsider.com. Until next time, have a passion for food, wine, and profits, and think of our program, Food and Wine Insider.